Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to another weekly episode of Everything Vaguely Paranormal. As always, I am Blake Smith, and with me are my partners in the paranormal, Miss Shelley Pruitt and Mr. Ryan Roberts. How are y'all doing?
Good, man. I even wore my Slayer hat for your topic tonight.
I see that, which I will slightly mention later on in the story.
Hell yeah, you better.
Just slightly.
Oh, really?
Just ever so slightly. Shelley, you should be excited. Tonight we're talking about your boyfriend.
I know. Don't call me Satan's mistress for nothing. I'm all kinds of excited. Now you be nice. Don't make me send him over there.
I think you'll be pleasantly surprised, and if I can, I'll make you fall more in love with him tonight.
Be still my heart.
I mean, she's close enough to him already.
She's close enough to him already.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, so yes, tonight we are taking on the big baddie himself, Mr. Evil. What I don't know what you want to call him.
Scratch.
What do you call him in bed, Shelley? That's the bigger question.
Sure.
Burning balls.
I call him the flaming penis. What?
And we're off to the races. So I when I went into this, I think y'all are going to be pleasantly surprised, because when I went into this, I found a couple of things that I guess had never tied together or something like that. So what is y'all's overall assumption of Satan, which is what we're talking about tonight? The devil, Lucifer, whatever you want to call him. What's y'all's overall assumption?
I mean, growing up in the South, we all went to church when we were growing up. So everybody kind of, everybody knows he's the adversary. He is the antithesis of God. He is, the angel that was cast out of heaven because he was supposed to try to lead a rebellion against God. He's also the biggest of the bad and the most evil force in the entire world and the netherworld. So that's
the more you know.
I was about to say, damn, Ryan, that's all right. Just listing off his resume, I see.
Yeah. I mean,
well, shocking as it is to a lot of people. I actually was a Sunday school teacher, so yeah. For a very brief period of time.
I know. That's the only thing that makes me unsettled tonight. Shelley, be gentle. Well, let's dive into it, because I got quite a bit to get into with Mr. Satan, Lucifer himself. So, in the shadows of myth and history, there exists a figure so dark, so mysterious, that he has haunted the human imagination for millennia. Known as the deceiver and the tempter, this figure is the embodiment of all that is wicked and corrupt. Just his name alone can send shivers down the spine. Yet his origins remain shrouded in mystery, or other things for Shelley. Well, Who is the master of deception? This fallen angel who opposes all that is good. For that, we have to journey deep into the abyss, peel back the layers of time, and reveal the early whispers of this malevolent spirit. This story doesn't begin in the fiery pits of hell, but in ancient lands where gods and demons waged wars for the souls of men. From Mesopotamia to the darkened texts of the Hebrew Bible, the seeds of this infamous character were sown long before he donned the horns and hoofs we associate with him today. These ancient cultures, rich with tales of chaos and divine wrath, laid the foundation for what would become the most feared demon in the spiritual realm. As we trace this evolution, you'll discover how a mere accuser in the courts of heaven transformed into the ultimate adversary, the eternal foe of mankind and the Prince of Darkness. And we ain't talking about Ozzy Osbourne, okay?
Prince of fucking Darkness. Shut up.
But this transformation was no simple tale of rebellion. It is a complex and sinister evolution shaped by theology, literature, and the very fears that lurk in the human heart. With each passing century, this demonic presence grew more defined, its malevolence more profound. We'll walk the twisted paths of medieval lore where this infamous entity was imprisoned in the icy depths of hell, and venture into the grand epics of Renaissance literature, where he emerged as a tragic anti-hero, defiant and proud. It was in these stories that his image was solidified, a being not only to be feared, but also pitied, a reflection of the internal struggles within every soul. With each step, the true nature of this figure becomes clearer, yet more terrifying. Yeah. Between the ancient scriptures and the dark tales of old, we will confront the very essence of evil. It is not just a tale of one being's fall from grace. It is a mirror reflecting our deepest fears, our darkest impulses, and the eternal struggle between good and evil. And as we uncover the roots of this infernal character, you may find yourself questioning the very nature of the battle that has raged for centuries. This is the story of the beast, the serpent, the antichrist. This is the rise of the devil. So yeah, get your protection out, light your candles, whatever you feel.
I can't believe we're talking about Barry Manilow tonight.
You leave Barry Manilow alone.
Tell me Barry Manilow is not Satan. There is only one way that man got famous, and it's through nefarious means.
Well, I'm going to...
How dare you smoke something with Barry Manilow?
Copacabana, these nuts.
Copacabana, these nuts, Jesus. Well, I am going to pop... Listen, I'm going to pop in a disclaimer just real quick. I don't actually have this written anywhere. I'm just going to say it. Listen, yes, we're talking about religion tonight and all that stuff. I ain't here to debate nobody's thoughts, nobody's belief systems, anything like that. I did a little bit of research, looked into a lot of things, and I was able to kind of flow this narrative together about how we get from single chaotic force to ultimate pure evil. So
and you've got your your religious text, but you've also got your folklore throughout eons talking about the devil. So you're going to have a lot of that going on.
Exactly. So long before,
and just FYI, I'm sorry, I am on the comments, and unfortunately, I can't get to the comment. So hello, everyone.
Oh shit!
And I will jump on them just as quickly as I can get to where I can see them.
Okay, sounds good.
All right.
Y'all don't put anything dirty in there while I'm not looking.
Testicular difficulties tonight. Anyways, well, long before the figure of the devil or Satan took shape in the religious imagination of the West, the ancient civilizations of the Near East grappled with the forces of chaos and malevolence in their own mythologies. The Near East included a region encompassing modern-day Egypt, Israel, Iraq, and those areas surrounding these present-day countries. This area was home to some of the world's first and earliest civilizations, including the Mesopotamians and the Canaanites. Excuse me. These ancient cultures helped shape early ideas of good, evil, and the forces that oppose divine order. Living in a world filled with unpredictable and often devastating natural forces that projected their fears and anxieties onto a pantheon of gods, demons, and other supernatural beings, many of whom played adversarial roles in their stories. And among these, certain deities and mythological figures began to crystallize as representations of disorder, destruction, and the darker aspects of existence, archetypes that would later merge and evolve into the character of Satan. Now, in these ancient worlds, gods were not always purely benevolent figures. In the fertile land of the Canaanites, the god I'm going to screw this up all night. Baal.
Baal, yeah.
B-A-A-L.
Baal, yep.
Yeah. Translated to the word Lord, held a central place in their religious practices as a major god in the Canaanite pantheon. He was primarily worshipped as a storm/weather god who brought rain and fertility to both the land and people in the form of crops and children. The dry summers of the area were explained as Baal's time in the underworld, and his return in the fall was said to cause a storm which revived the land. But many of these deities had dual aspects embodying both creation and destruction, or order and chaos. There's a lot of that back in this time. So, Baal's power to bring life through rain was linked to his capacity for destruction. When the skies darkened and the storms raged with relentless fury, the same god who brought life could just as easily bring death. Baal was also associated with war and chaos, especially in the context of his battles with other gods, specifically the sea god, I believe it's pronounced Yam or Yam, Y-A-M-M.
Sounds about right.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Yam because I'm from Texas. It sounds good, right? We eat a lot of yams here. We have a yam festival, okay? In this mythology, Yam was given kingship over the other gods by the chief god El. And when Yam's rulership turned tyrannical, Baal challenged and defeated Yam in a titanic battle, ending with Yam being cast out of the heavens. Sound familiar already, huh?
Yes.
Moving eastward still with this story, the ancient Mesopotamian civilization also grappled with the forces of chaos, though their approach was often more direct. In their vast and intricate pantheon, Marduk, I believe it's pronounced M-A-R-D-U-K.
Marduk.
Marduk. I was going with Marduk or Marduk. I had about a 50-50 shot.
The only reason I know is because I know there's a black metal band named
Marduk. Yeah, there is. And that's what I was going to go off of. I was like, no, I think it's pronounced Marduk.
Yeah, it could be Marduk, but...
Once I
I
get
know
past a
Marduk.
couple of these names, there's like one or two that I'll probably mispronounce later on. I've tried. I looked up all that. But again, I'm sorry. In the moment, I'm gonna forget sometimes.
It's okay, man.
So
All good.
Marduk, yeah, emerges as the chief god of Babylon, one of the most important cities in Mesopotamia. In the first millennia BC, Marduk was also known as Bel, Bel, or Lord. He was
Okay.
considered a god of creation, order, and justice, and a deity whose rise in power was marked by a dramatic and symbolic battle against the primordial chaos monster and sea goddess Tiamat. Often depicted as a warrior god, Marduk's triumph over Tiamat symbolized the triumph of civilization, law, and order over the chaotic and destructive forces of nature. Upon his defeat of Tiamat, Marduk uses her body to create the world or to create order from chaos. So these
It's kind of like the Gaia story.
kind of,
Gaia
yeah,
is the earth goddess, the mother of the,
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and you
Right.
find in a lot of these older civilizations that there's always some type of story like this. These gods
Right.
fighting, one that represents chaos, one that represents order. And what it is basically, if you look back at the beginnings of time with these ancient civilizations, that's how they established that cosmic battle in the beginning between good and
Right.
evil. You know, and that's kind of what we're
Right.
doing is setting up, because these are the beginning whispers for the overall character of Satan later on in life.
Right.
Or
And you
later
have
on in
all,
life and time, whatever.
right. And you have all of these ancient civilizations touching each other, so they're going to share a lot of the same culture and the same stories.
Yes, exactly.
Mhm.
So, like I said, that introduces the idea of the cosmic battle between good and evil, which would later influence the portrayal of Satan. In addition to gods like Baal and Marduk, ancient Near Eastern cultures also believed in the existence of spirits and demons that could act as adversaries to the gods or humanity. These spirits were not inherently evil, but played roles that challenged the status quo, or even challenged humanity, or blocked them from being able to do something. Going down on a mission or something, let's just say, to like collect something, and then something, this adversary blocks your path. That's how they could be seen, so they don't fulfill their mission or whatever.
Right. The ancient quest story.
Yeah.
Yes,
pretty
the
much.
hero's story, the hero's tale.
Yeah. Well, for example, in Mesopotamian mythology, there were demons like Lamashtu, who was believed to harm infants and pregnant women, and Pazuzu, who brought plagues, both of which we covered back in our episodes over Lilith and the true story of the Exorcist. And these early adversarial spirits provided the blueprint for the concept of a supernatural antagonist who opposes the divine. So this is kind of setting that scene for that. So you can kind of already see these different traits that are starting to be lined out.
Right.
Well, in these ancient myths, we see the early contours of a narrative that would resonate through the ages, the struggle between good and evil, order and chaos, creation and destruction. While these stories were not yet about Satan in the sense that we understand him today, they established the patterns that he would inherit and be reinterpreted in later cultures. Now, Baal's, we're going back to the Baal. Baal's duality as both life giver and destroyer, Marduk's battle against the chaos of Tiamat, these were more than just stories. They were expressions of human struggle to understand and control the unpredictable forces in the world. Now, as these myths were passed down through generations, they began to influence the religious thought of neighboring cultures, Ryan, just as you said, including that of the ancient Hebrews. Now, in ancient Hebrew, Baal himself would take on a different name. He became known as Lord of the Heavens, or Lord of the High Place or Heavenly Dwelling, which can be translated into Beelzebul.
Sounds very familiar.
Doesn't it, though?
Well,
many anthropologists have pointed out that the worldview of most peoples consists of two pairs binary oppositions: human, non-human, and we and they. And even during the time of the Philistines, specifically the city of Ekron, we see this worldview shaping of the we versus they mentality. The Philistines were an ancient people who lived on the south coast of Canaan, who took the original name Beelzebul and twisted it to worship their own deity, known as Beelzebub, or Lord.
That's what I call
of
him when
flies.
he's being naughty.
And this is actually first mentioned in the ancient Hebrew Bible, also known as the Old Testament, in 2 Kings, which states, quote, I'm going to mispronounce some names here too, but anyways. Now, Isaiah, I believe. Anyways, fell through the lattice in his upper chamber in Samaria. No, it's not Azazel.
Azazel's different, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Ahaziah. I'm horrible about old, like, ancient time names with, like, gods. I'm sorry. I apologize.
I thought we were going demon echelons. I had one for you.
Yeah.
I was excited.
Okay. Shelly's like, I just learned this last week from Satan himself. No. Anyways, basically, in 2 Kings, it states that he falls through the lattice in his upper chamber in Samaria and lays sick. So he sends messengers telling them, go inquire of Beelzebub, the god of Ekron, whether I shall recover from the sickness. But we could still go back even further to see the first instance of this us versus them mentality. Now, when God vowed to make Abraham the father of a new world and blessed nation, he also identified and characterized its enemies as lesser. So from the onset, Israelite tradition distinguishes us as the people of Israel, or the people of God, based on ethnic, political, and religious criteria, in contrast to them, which is the other nations, the foreign adversaries,
right.
Frequently depicted as morally corrupt, inferior, right. Sometimes even cursed.
Right, because I believe the passage says, I will bless those that bless you and curse those that curse you.
Yes, it does. So, yeah. Mm-hmm. And again, we see this in the second great foundation story of Moses and the Exodus, when Pharaoh is urged to let the Hebrews leave Egypt. It's this duality, the ultimate bad to the good. There's always us versus them. So you can really begin to see more of the framework going into place for what would become the figure of Satan, also known as Beelzebub, which we know now where that name derives from, which is from the ancient god or deity in Ekron. Mm-hmm. But during this time, when Israelite writers criticized their fellow Jews using mythological language, they typically avoided the animalistic or monstrous imagery often reserved for foreign enemies. Instead of likening their Jewish adversaries to creatures like Leviathan or the dragon, they frequently associated them with a high-ranking, albeit treacherous, figure in the divine court, known as the Satan. Now, the Satan is not depicted as a beast or monster, but as one of God's angels, a being of elevated intelligence and status. And this suggests that the Israelites viewed their internal foes not as brutish or monstrous, but as superhuman entities whose superior qualities and insider positions rendered them even more dangerous than external enemies. Mm-hmm. So in the Hebrew Bible and in mainstream Judaism to this day, Satan is not portrayed in the same way that Western Christendom has come to understand him, as the ruler of an evil empire, commanding this army of malevolent spirits at war with God and humanity. Instead, as he first appears in the Hebrew scriptures, Satan is not inherently evil, nor is he in opposition to God. Mm-hmm. On the contrary, in texts like the Book of Job, Satan is presented as one of God's loyal servants, a messenger or an angel. In a Hebrew tradition, angels were often referred to as sons of God and were envisioned as part of a hierarchical structure, either as members of a great army or the staff of a royal court. Mm-hmm. So the term the Satan in biblical sources does not refer to a specific character, but rather describes a role, an adversarial function, as I was saying about Mesopotamian times back then. So Hebrew storytellers as early as the 6th century BCE would occasionally introduce a supernatural figure called the Satan, but they were referring to an angel being sent by God with a specific task of obstructing or challenging human endeavors. So I found that rather interesting. Right. That was like, oh, okay. They have a collective term.
Yeah. Because, tell me if I'm wrong here, but if I remember correctly, because I went to a synagogue one time for a service. Mm-hmm. I took classes in school. It was a Bible class, and we went on a field trip. And if I'm not mistaken, Jews don't believe in an actual devil, and they refer to, and Satan literally means adversary. And so they don't necessarily believe that he is lording over hell, if I'm not mistaken.
If memory serves me right in all of this, I believe that you are correct on that.
Right.
Yeah.
So that is very interesting. And, and when, from a Judeo-Christian point of view, like when I was taught in church, when we were growing up, when you read the book of Job, you're taught the devil was literally in hell planning to go after Job and was trying to wager a bet with God, like, oh, he'll curse you if I keep doing this to him. It's very interesting to hear from that perspective that he's actually an angel, and he's like, oh, well, if I do this, we'll see what happens. You know what I mean? That's pretty interesting.
Yeah. Well, we're actually about to talk about the book of Job real quick, because in the ancient scriptures, one of the earliest and most significant mentions of Satan is found in the book of Job, a profound text that delves into the themes of suffering, faith, and divine justice. Now, the story revolves around a man named Job, who is known for his righteousness and unwavering faith in God. Job is described as a man of great wealth, blessed with a large family and many possessions. He is deeply pious, always careful to avoid any actions that might offend God. However, his faith is put to the ultimate test. Now, the narrative begins with a dramatic scene in the heavenly court where the, quote, sons of God, or divine beings, gather before the Lord. And among them is, as it's referred in the book, Satan, referred to in Hebrew, I believe is pronounced Ha-Satan, H-A dash and then Satan, S-A-T-A-N, meaning the accuser or the adversary. So in this setting, Satan is not an evil being himself. Like, he's not the evil being that we know him as in this world, but rather a member of the divine council, as we were previously stating. His role is to challenge and test the righteousness of humans, acting as a sort of heavenly prosecutor. And based on scholarly analysis, the book of Job was more than likely written between the 7th and 3rd centuries BCE, with the prose of the narrative pointing more to the 6th century BCE, which means that in this context, in ancient Hebrew storytelling, as I previously just said, in the 6th century, that, quote, Satan would be more of a collective term, the Satan, which has since been misinterpreted throughout time. So basically, just remember that as we kind of, progress through this story here. Well, Satan, or the Satan, questioned Job's piety, suggesting that Job is only faithful because of the blessings and protection he has received from God. He implies that Job's righteousness is not genuine, but rather a result of his favorable circumstances. And to prove this point, Satan poses a test. Strip Job of his wealth, his children, and his health, and see if he still remains faithful to God. And God agrees to his test, but sets a limit. Satan is forbidden to take Job's life, or the Satan is forbidden to take Job's life. And what follows is a series of devastating events. He loses his livestock, his servants, his children in tragic accident, but he still does not give up. His suffering continues. He gets sores all over his body. He cries out and all this stuff, but he still does not give up. He's urged by friends to repent his sins, to have his fortunes restored, but he's like, no, it ain't my fault. Like, I did nothing wrong. He remains innocent throughout all of this.
While he's scraping his sores with pottery and like, yeah.
But in the end, he's maintaining his faith. Because of maintaining his faith, Job's fortunes are restored with twice as much as he once had. And so the depiction of Satan in the book of Job is crucial for understanding the early Jewish concept of this figure. Satan acts as a sort of prosecutor, as I said, a role that involves testing and challenging those individuals to prove their true character. So this portrayal is far from what we know. Right. But instead, they really kind of, in the research that I did, it really drove home this portion of the ancient Hebrew text and how it is really misrepresented throughout time, because it's more of the collective term than it is the individual. Right. Which continues to appear in the Hebrew Bible later on, each time serving as an adversary, challenging or opposing individuals that reveal deeper truths about human nature and divine will, so to speak. Two of them that are found in there, it is of Balaam and King David, where the Satan plays this pivotal role in altering some course of events. Now with Balaam, he is basically sent to curse the Israelites as they journey through the wilderness. And this is in the book of Numbers, I believe. And so on his way, the donkey that he's basically riding, like, stops in the path because the donkey can see this adversarial angel standing in the path. And so the donkey is not wanting to go forward, and he ends up backing into a wall, crushing Balaam's foot, and the donkey just lays down, and he just basically starts beating him until his eyes are open to this angel that's standing in the way. And basically the donkey is allowed to speak at that point and says, "What have I done to you that you have struck me these 3 times?" And that's when he sees this angel holding this sword standing in the way. So the angel rebukes Balaam, warning him that his reckless journey would have ended in death if not for the donkey's actions. So it's I find it interesting. And this, what are you laughing at?
And Sim Plum just looks at his satchel. I really got to stop drinking.
Well, this encounter reveals, the Satan as that adversarial force once again. And the second instance of this occurs in the life of King David, one of Israel's greatest rulers, where basically the census that he does, the census is this great sin, because he's not believing and having faith in the power of God so much as the power of man, power of military, so to speak. So basically that act of provocation leads David to command the census despite the warnings from trusted advisors. And once the census is completed, David's conscience is stricken and he realizes the gravity of his mistake. And God's so angry by it that he kills 70,000 men. And so it's this Satan in this portion that is really tying in. He incites David to do it.
Okay. All right.
What?
I was gonna say because he's warning Blom about it. So
see, that's kind of where a switch starts to happen here, in my opinion. When I was reading through this, it's where the switch begins to happen, to where it's not necessarily adversarial to stop something bad from happening so much as it is now
like a messenger,
almost like a messenger, if you will. But it incites King David to go ahead and do it. So.
Which is odd, because if you see an angel with a flaming sword that says you better not, and you're like, I think I'll hedge my bets. Let's do this.
But probably the one to me that is most profound is the one in the book of Zechariah, because here the Satan appears once again, but his role takes on a darker tone, and you can kind of see him in the bottom right hand of this picture.
Right.
But this hints at the transformation. The beginnings of the transformation that would later fully manifest the character Satan, which is understood in Christian theology today. So the scene is set in a vision given to the prophet Zechariah. He witnesses Joshua, the high priest, standing before the angel, for an angel of the Lord, with Satan, or the Satan, standing to the right hand side to accuse him. And this image is stark, presenting the Satan as not just an accuser, but an adversary intent on undermining the high priest, who symbolizes spiritual leadership. And as the vision unfolds, the Satan challenges Joshua's worthiness, pointing out his filthy garments, which is a symbol of sin. It's a powerful image, with Satan seeking to discredit Joshua before God, emphasizing this shift from the mere tester of faith to a figure actively working against God's chosen servant. So that's really where that transition. And this is where we kind of get that set. When we say, get thee Satan behind me, I rebuke you, and then and stuff like that. That's right. That's what's said. The Lord rebukes you, Satan. The Lord has chosen. The Lord that has chosen Jerusalem rebukes you. And so this is kind of that first time that we see God standing up, saying, "No, ain't having that shit. You're not opposing me." Type stuff. So that marks this turning point, where it's no longer this figure in God's counsel, but a dark force working against the divine. So those are really the big moments where this, in the ancient Hebrew text, the Satan is misrepresented throughout time to believe to be Satan himself. Okay. So I found that pretty interesting when you go back and actually read the actual ancient text and decipher from that itself.
So
how that
people
kind of
are
unfolds.
And people are conflating an adversary with the adversary.
Right. That's the whole difference. There's that little play on word. It's not the adversary, it's an adversary in these texts, in this setting.
Right.
So in all three stories, the Satan functions, as we said, as an adversary, not in the sense of malevolent being acting independently of God, but an agent within the divine council, testing, challenging individuals to reveal their true character. But it's not until that book of Zechariah that he really makes that turn.
Right.
And most of these, as I was researching, like, okay, when was this book written? When was that book written? Of course, they're...
Good luck.
Yeah, I know. That's what I'm saying. In the research of all of it, it's kind of like, well, it's not specifically stated. We can't narrow down. But looking at the prose and how it is written versus what we know in storytelling of the time, we can narrow it down to this set of time here. And all of that kind of falls within this time in ancient Hebrew, when these storytellers are really using the term the Satan to describe this adversary that is going against humanity.
Mhm.
But in the history of oral tradition, as things are passed down, of course they are changed, they are tweaked, and the story that is told depends on the individual storyteller. So
Right.
each person will put their own personal
Right.
insight on it. That's the way anything happens. Whenever I tell a story, is different than when Blake or Ryan tells a story. So I guess it just depends on who actually writes it down on paper, which would have been the clergy, I'm guessing
Scribes.
clergy, monks, scribes, anything like that. So, yeah, I think it depends on who was the last one that got the story as to how it is perceived and written and accepted as the truth.
Absolutely. Yeah, 100%.
Now, I
Go ahead, Ray.
believe that Job is actually the oldest book of the Bible that we know about. If I'm not mistaken, if they were dating everything, I think even though Job comes later on in the Bible, I think that as far as the books that make up the Bible, I think Job is the oldest. So, having that adversarial Satan versus like an actual Satan does make a whole lot of sense.
Well, as we move further into the 6th century BCE, it's important to remember that these texts did not emerge just in a vacuum. They just didn't out there. But the Jewish people were living through the Babylonian exile, a period of great turmoil and cultural exchange. And during this time, they came into contact with the beliefs and practices of other civilizations, including the ancient Persian religion of Zoroastrianism. I do believe I actually got that one
Nice job.
Well, Zoroastrianism is one of the world's oldest monotheistic religions, founded by the prophet Zoroaster in ancient Persia. A central idea in Zoroastrianism is dualism, the belief that the universe is a battleground between two opposing forces, the God of light and goodness and the spirit of darkness and evil. Bam! So you have these ancient Hebrew storytellers that are being introduced into this new concept with this Babylonian exile that is also taking place. So they began to incorporate the elements of this cosmic dualism into their own theology. And thus the concept of Satan started to evolve into a more cosmic antagonist and full opposition of God and the embodiment of the ultimate evil. Because you have this thing that's against humanity. It's standing in the way. It's an adversary.
Right.
So, we have dualism, the darkness and the evil. Let's slam them together is basically kind of what happened.
It's transcending.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the figure of Satan became more prominent and personified. While the figure of Satan became more prominent and personified, stories about his origins began to spread and take shape. These tales not only explain how such a powerful being could turn against the very force that created him. They do explain. These tales explain how such.
Yeah, you're fine.
Lord, my writing sometimes.
I'm like, what are we going to talk about this?
Well, one popular story tells of a high-ranking angel, once revered in the heavenly hierarchy, who grew rebellious. His insubordination against his commander, the Almighty, led to his downfall, quite literally. And this tale echoes the account from the book of Isaiah, where the fall of a great prince is talked about. And that is the portion basically we know of the falling of Lucifer. Right. It just says, how are you fallen from heaven, day stars, son of the dawn? How are you fallen to earth, conqueror of the nations? You said in your heart, I will ascend to heaven above the stars of God. I will set my throne on high. I will ascend upon the high clouds, but you are brought back down to darkness, to the depth of the pit. And this bright and shining star, whose name would later be translated into Latin as Lucifer, meaning light bearer, eventually became a central figure in literature and religious thought. However, the story of Lucifer's fall was not the only narrative to gain traction in Jewish and Christian circles during the 1st century. Another set of stories, widely spread but falsely attributed, tells of how the, quote, sons of God, angels themselves, were drawn down to earth by lust. Basically, that they saw the women, the daughters of men, and they were like, hey, they're
the Nephilim.
That's where the Nephilim
exactly.
That's
Yep.
right.
Yep. Absolutely. If you want to know more about that,
wicked city women. Yeah.
I was gonna say, you want to know more about the Nephilim and all that stuff, go listen to Lilith, our episode over her. It's quite interesting. But this tale suggests that their desire for earthly pleasures led to their downfall, furthering the narrative of this angelic rebellion. But yet another story comes from an alternate version of the life of Adam and Eve. And in this account, after God created Adam, he gathered all the angels to admire his creation, commanded them to bow before this new being. Michael, the archangel, obeyed, but Satan refused. And in this context, in this alternate version of the life of Adam and Eve, Satan is Satan, the independent figure.
Mm-hmm.
So this act of defiance, driven by pride and jealousy, marked the beginning of this cosmic sibling rivalry, with Satan becoming the first to turn away from God's will. So that's another alternate version about how all this downfall started to take place during this time. This is like the first century that we're talking about. Now, at first glance, these stories may seem quite different from one another, but they all share a common thread. The idea that Satan, this powerful, dangerous adversary, did not originate from some distant or foreign place. He wasn't an outsider or a stranger. Instead, he was an intimate enemy, someone who was once close,
The
trusted,
devil you know.
and integral to the heavenly order. Exactly.
The call's coming from inside the house.
But he was the kind of being whose loyalty and goodwill were vital to the harmony of both heaven and earth. Yet it was precisely this intimacy that made his rebellion so profound and his betrayals so devastating. Now, whichever version of Satan's origin you choose to believe, they all depict him as an enemy who was once an ally, a trusted figure who, driven by jealousy or pride, turned against those he's supposed to protect. And this transformation from loyal servant of God to his greatest adversary serves as a powerful reflection of the internal conflicts that have plagued humanity throughout history. So those who asked, how could God's own angel become his enemy, were in essence of the time asking the question, how can one of us become one of them? And the age-old question comes back, we versus they. So I find that kind of full circle moment that is kind of intriguing in that part.
I'm going to ask what side you want to be on.
Yeah.
I don't know who has cookies. No, it's that's a deciding factor for me. I'm just saying, if you got cookies, I'm on your team.
You're so easy.
Well, as Christianity began to emerge and grow in the first few centuries CE, the figure of Satan took on a much darker and prominent role. This transformation was influenced by Jewish traditions and the broader cultural context of the Roman Empire. Early Christian writers and theologians expanded on the concept of Satan that can be seen clearly in the New Testament and the writings of early Christian thinkers. Now, the New Testament, second part of the Christian Bible, is filled with references to Satan, portraying him as the archenemy of Christ and the leader of all forces opposed to God's will. I think we know these stories pretty damn well.
Right.
But one of the most significant appearances of Satan in the New Testament is during the temptations of Jesus, as described in the Gospels of Mark, Matthew, and Luke. And in this narrative, Satan tries to lure Jesus away from his divine mission by offering him worldly power and glory. And Jesus' steadfast refusal to give in to Satan's temptation sets up a clear and stark opposition, boom, right there, between the forces of good embodied by Jesus and the forces of evil embodied by Satan. It's almost like in this moment, when in the stories of the New Testament, that we have that defined line, God versus Satan, so to speak. Go ahead.
But in context of what you've been saying so far, where like the Satan is the prosecuting angel, like the accusatory angel, it almost seems like in this story, you know, it is that being showing up instead of the actual devil himself. It's almost like because God, even though, you know, in the story, Jesus is the Son of God, God is testing Jesus and his faith. So he's sending the Satan instead of the actual Satan to test him.
And that's what a lot of this was referencing at this whenever I was reading through. This wonderful book called The Origin of Satan by Elaine Pagels was fascinating to read. And as she sets this portion up, yes, you're exactly right on that, Ryan. Is that because basically this is now the Son of God instead of the Satan, it is Satan himself. We've now built this character throughout this time because he has started taking, once his origin story started with the Garden of Eden, you know, Adam and Eve, and things of that nature, he really took on this singular entity, no longer the collective of the Satan, but of the Satan.
Okay.
You know, so,
yeah,
or I guess you could say a Satan, but the Satan.
Right. And what I'm saying is, though, is it's almost like the angel came and not the being of Satan, if it, like in the context of what you're talking about, like coming from the Jewish tradition.
Oh, yeah. I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Right.
I see what you're saying now. Yes.
Yeah.
So we actually had a question in the comments that asked which do we, I guess, personally believe in is the most accurate of the tale, the Old Testament or the New Testament?
Ooh.
I mean, that
Good
depends
question.
on.
Do you
well,
want to
that-
wait till the end of that discuss that, or
I mean, that also.
let's pin. Hold on, let's pin that for
Okay.
now. That's a great
Okay.
discussion question
Okay,
because
all right.
so let me
yeah.
let me clarify. So Satan has shown up as, and he really kind of doesn't show up until around the beginning of the New Testament, correct? If we're talking about the Bible
Like-
proper.
correct.
Like the
Right.
Satan.
The Satan, yes, at the,
Okay.
in the New Testament. Yes,
Sorry,
correct.
Satan, not the Satan. Is
I was just
collective.
trying to figure out
Satan.
how old he was.
Yeah.
You know, I like older men.
He
No,
hasn't
I'm
told
playing.
he hasn't told you how old he is yet, Shelley?
No, it's fine.
Well, in the gospel, Satan is also called the prince of this world, which indicates his dominion
Right.
over earthly powers and his role in leading humanity astray. And this title suggests that Satan holds significant influence over the world itself, corrupting it and leading it away from God's truth. In the letters of the New Testament, particularly those written by Paul, Satan is depicted as an active adversary of the Christian church. Now, Paul warns believers to be vigilant against, quote, the schemes of the devil, and describes Satan as a cunning deceiver who masquerades as, quote, an angel of light.
Right.
And this portrayal underscores Satan's role as that deceptive force, leading people away from that true faith. Now, the idea of spiritual warfare, an ongoing battle between those forces of good and evil, is a recurring theme in the New Testament. And Christians are encouraged to, quote, put on the full armor of God to stand against the devil's attacks. So this metaphorical language begins to highlight the belief in the ongoing struggle against Satan itself. And it's bringing him more, almost to a more personal level, if you will. It starts to bring that idea into it. You got to put on the full armor of God to stand against the devil's attacks
Well,
or
it
Satan's
also
attacks.
gives him a power that may not really have been attributed to him before. Before he was just a tempter, and now instead of just saying no, now you actually have to battle him.
Yeah.
So
Right. So
It
and now
starts
now
to
he's
build up that
he's starting to congeal into the actual entity that we know as Satan at that point.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, beyond the New Testament, early Christian thinkers and theologians further developed the concept of Satan. Now, the church fathers, these early Christian theologians who shaped much of Christian doctrine, contributed significantly to the development of Satan's character. Figures like Saint Irenaeus, I can't ever say that one right. Saint Augustine and Saint Gregory the Great wrote extensively about Satan, emphasizing his role as a fallen angel who rebelled against God and was cast out of heaven, kind of tying it back to that very first Mesopotamian culture where their God is cast out of, God of chaos is cast out of heaven as well.
Right.
So they increasingly depicted Satan as the personification of all evil. Now, Augustine, in particular, argued that Satan's rebellion was driven by pride and a desire to be equal to God, making him the archetype of sin and disobedience. And this only solidified Satan's role in Christian thought. Because the book of Revelation, the final book in the New Testament, plays a key role in shaping Christian eschatology, which is the study of end times, and the role of Satan in the ultimate battle between good and evil. Now, Revelation describes a great war in heaven where Michael and his angels defeat the dragon or Satan, who is then cast down to earth. And this dramatic imagery reinforces the idea of Satan as a powerful but ultimately doomed adversary destined to be defeated by God's forces. And in Revelation, Satan is depicted as this instigator of this final rebellion against God, leading to the climactic battle of basically, Armageddon. So, Shelley, to touch on you, as you said, towards the end of the New Testament, that he starts to become that type of figure. Yes, especially with the book of Revelation and how that is all portrayed and set up. So so far it's like, damn, you've gone from Mesopotamian times with these little whispers of these forces of bad to just through basically the end of the New Testament. And Satan's already this full-blown entity at this point through this transformation. So, well, however, his defeat is assured, obviously, and ultimately bound and cast into the lake of fire, symbolizing his eternal punishment and the triumph of good over evil. And this apocalyptic vision deeply influenced Christian views on Satan and the nature of evil, establishing the belief in Satan's eventual destruction as part of God's plan for the end of the world. Now, as Christian thought continued to evolve, particularly during the Middle Ages, we're up to this point now, and this is the moment where it's just like bing, bang, boom.
Here we go.
I mean, here comes Satan.
Let's do some
Here comes-
crusades. Let's go
Yeah,
do some.
I mean,
Let's
here
go
comes the-
spark some shit up.
The forked
Yeah.
tongue and the pitchfork. Here he
Yeah,
comes.
And
pretty
let's do
much.
it in the name of God, right?
Yeah, because it's like you already have this very well established now figure by the time we reach the end of the New Testament writings, you know, and all that stuff. It just fucking exploded. You talk about like, I mean, basically like today's viral meme, you know, I mean, he gained further depth and complexity. But while the New Testament portrayed Satan as a significant adversary to Christ and a corrupter of humanity, medieval theologians and scholars expanded upon his role, embedding Satan more deeply into Christian doctrine. This period shift from viewing Satan merely as a tempter to recognizing him as a powerful, active force in human affairs, directly influenced the understanding of original sin and the nature of human corruption. Now, as the Middle Ages progressed, this more detailed view of Satan became central to discussions on sin and salvation, deeply influencing those Christian beliefs and practices. Many theological writings, literature, and art all contributed to this more detailed portrayal, reflecting the religious concerns of the time. St. Augustine played a key role in shaping how Satan was understood during this period. His interpretation of the Garden of Eden, with Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, placed Satan as the center of humanity's fall. Augustine taught that Satan, in the form of a certain serpent, tempted Eve to eat the forbidden fruit, leading to the introduction of sin into the world. And this act wasn't just a simple mistake. It marked the beginning of a corrupted human nature. And so the idea that all humans inherit, God dang, I'm going to try and talk tonight, guys. Is that cool? The idea that all humans inherit this original sin from Adam and Eve becomes a cornerstone of medieval theology.
Right, the knowledge of good and evil, and I think it's very interesting that the serpent actually became introduced later, because a lot of times it's thought that the tempter of Eve was not a serpent, that it was actually in human form or in a form that she could identify, but it's kind of evolved to be the serpent. That's why, isn't it? That's why they had to crawl on their bellies.
Well, Augustine's teachings highlighted Satan's active role in this event, emphasizing his ongoing influence over humanity. And this understanding positions Satan not as a distant adversary, but as a constant presence, seeking to lead people away from God. That's where St. Augustine basically kind of cements that, is that he's now this constant presence. He's everywhere. He's every day. You know, you got to fight him every day now to not be led away.
He's behind that bush over there.
Well, scholasticism, a method of learning that emphasizes logic and reason, further developed this medieval view of Satan. Theologians like Thomas Aquinas described Satan as a fallen angel who retained his angelic nature, but was corrupted by his rebellion against God. Now, Aquinas also explored the hierarchy of demons, with Satan at the top as their ruler, reflecting the medieval belief in a well-organized kingdom of evil under Satan's control.
He was just a whisper. Now he owns property.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he was.
Yeah,
he was a whisper to a wanderer, and now he has bought a house. That's basically where we're at.
He's putting up a fence,
and he has workers.
And it's the contractors building the house. That's what's happening here. Well, both of these teachings in medieval theology developments firmly established Satan's role as the central figure of this underworld now. And this is really kind of more or less a framework, if you will, as we're about to see here in just a second with one great piece of literature that came along. Go ahead, Ryan.
I was going to say, and you would know, Blake, because I know you're into more demonology. Is this the person who came up with the Encyclopedia of the Damned that have all the princes of hell and like their underlings and all that? Is this the same guy?
Ooh, you know what? That is a question I actually don't know the answer to. I'll have to look that up. I don't think I've ever been asked that or ever thought that.
Okay.
Wait,
good question.
Give me your question more time.
So the person that just like talked about Satan and
Thomas Aquinas.
Hierarchy.
Yeah.
Thomas Aquinas. I said, is he the one that that wrote the Encyclopedia of the Damned that has all the princes of hell and like all the demons and stuff that are supposed to reside and reign in hell?
There are medieval texts going back before Thomas. There's texts that go back farther than that that mention, I'm not sure they were referred to as demons proper. They are referred
like princes
to
of hell.
Right. Yes, princes of hell. I believe that they have some that are referred to as they were allowed to own. They were in charge of legions, and each legion had a
Right.
number. Like, one gets the 7th legion, and that depends on their hierarchy. There are some texts that go back about those kind of demonology and demons and that way back. So back to the Middle Ages.
Yeah, sorry.
So.
Yeah, so I know there's like one that we have used before. We were looking up different princes of hell because we were talking about something, and I didn't know if that was the one, because I know
I don't believe so. I don't think that it was.
Right.
Whenever
okay.
we were looking that up. Yeah.
Because I know there's like that, and then the Malleus Maleficarum, the witch's hammer, that's supposed to have all
Right.
that in it too, Anyway, sorry, continue.
No, you're good. You're good.
Yeah.
Well, as the Middle Ages transitioned into the Renaissance, another explosive time for Satan himself, Satan continued to evolve, becoming even more vivid in the cultural imagination. Well, during the Renaissance, art and literature played a crucial role in shaping and spreading these depictions, drawing heavily from the religious teachings of the previous eras, while also reflecting the broader cultural shifts of the time. Artists and writers of the Renaissance took the medieval portrayals of Satan and expanded on them, using their work to explore themes of sin, punishment, and redemption in increasingly dramatic, very dramatic, and detailed ways. Now, in art, one of the most iconic depictions of Satan, though I find it interesting in Michelangelo's version, he actually does not really make an appearance, is the scene of the Last Judgment, where Christ judges the souls of the living and the dead. Now, in these powerful images and the variations of this, Satan is often shown as the ruler of hell, this grotesque and terrifying figure presiding over the damned. And these depictions with Satan at the center of a chaotic world were meant to instill fear and remind believers of the consequences of sin. I mean, they were, if you go look up Renaissance pictures of Satan, oh my God.
I
Terrifying.
love like Euronymous Bosch. I love Euronymous
Holy
Bosch. Those
shit.
things are so cool.
I'm like, holy shit.
Yeah.
But of course, Michelangelo's fresco, The Last Judgment, which is in the Sistine Chapel, probably the most famous version of the Last Judgment. But beautiful renditions are out there, and the variations of those a lot of them do put Satan in the picture himself. And I mean, he's just vile and grotesque as he could possibly be. The Renaissance did him no favors.
And usually depicted as a black figure.
Yes.
Right.
Just all darkness.
Oh, those paintings are so metal.
Oh yeah,
so
cool. They are.
Yeah.
Well, Renaissance literature also left an indelible mark on how Satan was perceived, particularly through Dante's Inferno, the first part of his epic poem, The Divine Comedy. Now, in Dante's work, Satan is portrayed as a monstrous three-headed beast trapped in the frozen center of hell, eternally chewing on the greatest traitors, including Judas. Now, this imagery powerfully conveys Satan's association with betrayal and ultimate punishment. And Dante places Satan at the very center of hell, trapped in ice. And this depiction contrasts sharply so far with the fiery images often associated with hell, emphasizing, and this really kind of emphasizes actually his powerlessness. And Satan now is not just a ruler, but a prisoner now.
Do you know why he's trapped under ice, though? Because I think the lower level of hell is supposed to be so far from God's light that it's so cold that it burns you, instead of fire and brimstone. It's pretty cool.
I love how childish, not in a bad way, but childish Ryan gets. He's like, it's pretty cool. By the way, Dante's Inferno, excellent game too.
Oh, dude, yeah, I played it. It was so good.
It's jacked up, messed up, and horrible if you've never played it.
Yeah.
But anyways, I digress.
You have to fight unbaptized babies.
I know you do, and they have scythes for arms. But anyways,
yeah.
But we have to. Hey, it's better when you get to the lust category. Okay, when the women's vaginas split open and they have a scorpion tail that stings you.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Take y'all's games away from you. It's horrible.
My mom said I could play them. Anyways, in Dante's Inferno, Satan is frozen in place, unable to escape or act, symbolizing the ultimate consequence in his rebellion. The impact of Dante's vision of Satan was immense. It cemented the image of Satan as a fallen being, doomed to eternal suffering. So, I just find it's like you can really see how Satan's story just kind of the trajectory of it, and then the fall down of it is like boom, boom, boom. I'm the ultimate evil. Oh, now I'm trapped. I'm fucked at this point. Like when we get to Dante's Inferno. So this portrayal influenced countless works of art, literature, and even theological thought. It reinforced the idea of Satan as this tragic figure, once mighty, but now utterly defeated. So Inferno shaped how generations would perceive Satan. The image of a frozen, three-faced monster gnawing on traitors became iconic, or as Ryan would say, metal. It added layers of complexity to the character of Satan, making him not just a figure to fear, but also one to pity. And this duality left a lasting mark on Satan in Western culture. Now, as the Renaissance progressed, these depictions continued to influence how people understood the nature of sin, punishment, and the afterlife as well, with Satan serving as a very powerful symbol of the consequences of basically your moral failure.
Your bad behavior.
This is what's going to happen. But the Renaissance ushered in new perspectives on Satan, influenced by a renewed interest in classical mythology, humanism, and the individual's role in shaping destiny. Now, with this shift, Satan began to be viewed less as a distant embodiment of evil and more as a symbol of human defiance against divine rule. And this change mirrored the growing belief in human agency, where people started to see themselves as capable of making their own choices, even if those choices lead them astray. And in literature, probably one of the best known, this evolving view of Satan found a powerful expression in John Milton's Paradise Lost. Now, this literary masterpiece had a huge impact on how people saw Satan, giving him a depth and complexity that had never been seen before. And in Paradise Lost, Satan isn't just a simple figure of pure evil. Instead, he is a tragic anti-hero with a mix of both good and bad qualities. In Milton, Satan is shown as this rebellious angel who defies God, driven by pride and a desire for independence. And his famous line, "Better to reign in hell than serve in heaven," shows his defiance and strong will, making him a symbol of resistance against authority. So now it's kind of like we're in this. I mean, Milton's version of Satan is like super complex. I mean, if you've ever had to read Paradise Lost.
It's also not only a symbol of rebellion, it's also a symbol of rising against oppression and refusing to be oppressed.
Right.
So yeah, the character of Satan in that is incredibly complex, and you do pity the devil, in that particular story.
It brings up, like, his portrayal brings up issues about like free will, authority, things of that nature of evil, themes that at the time really kind of struck a chord with people and what they were going through. Milton basically sets I can't talk tonight. Sets up, I'm going to say that instead, the framework for the next centuries to kind of come when we enter this romantic period, where Satan really takes yet another turn. So, but I find just how profound Milton's work was on the influence of the character of Satan. I mean, it goes on for centuries on how Satan is perceived.
And hopefully I'm not jumping your story, but it kind of seems like that's the version that Anton LaVey kind of latches on to and kind of uses to craft what he did later on.
Right. Yeah. Because we'll touch on that as we get into, basically the 1900s. So it's, I don't know. This whole section over Paradise Lost, I mean, it was a huge section because that's just how big the influence that Paradise Lost had on how people perceive the devil or Satan. So I found
you've been told in the comments that the devil has your tongue tonight. Devil's got your tongue.
And finally, an excuse. I'm not just caught. But anyways, so basically he becomes this complex figure who represented the tensions between authority and freedom, obedience and rebellion, and are central to the human experience. Well, not only that, but during this time, the Protestant Reformation, led by figures like Martin Luther, also changed how people thought about Satan. And during this time, Satan wasn't just seen as a distant force of evil. You see, there's good old Martin Luther nailing that crap onto the board.
The 95 Thesis.
The 95 Thesis. But Satan wasn't just seen as a distant force of evil, but as a real and active presence in everyday life. Luther believed that the devil was constantly working to mislead people and weaken their faith. He saw Satan as a personal enemy, one who was always looking for ways to steer believers away from God. Now, this belief in Satan's active role made him feel more immediate and threatening to people during the Reformation. I mean, basically, this is like the whole devil's on your shoulder era.
Right.
You know, he is there. You're influenced at every turn in life at this point is where they're starting to think.
Right.
So both Protestants and Catholics used the image of Satan to accuse each other of being in league with the devil during this time. This was a time of great religious conflict, and each side painted the other as being influenced by Satan, which intensified that fear and suspicion of the time. The Reformation also spread the idea that Satan was a direct threat to individual believers, not just this now abstract thought, you know, which again made it more personal to them. So it made Satan this central figure in this religious conflict to everybody kind of involved in this community surrounding it. It's that old saying, like, you know, not old saying, but the old, you know, we hear it when they're like the devil's in the community with the witch trials, which we're actually about to talk about. You know, when they think the devil's everywhere, everybody becomes paranoid. He's lurking around the bush.
Well,
like you're
also
saying,
it moves it to the point where Satan doesn't just tempt the good and the faithful and the righteous. He's able to tempt everyone, and you two are susceptible. That kind of puts him in even a more aggressive and evil. It's a more evil ideology because I mean, I go to church every day. Well, okay, but I'm not a priest. I'm not a ruler. I won't be tempted. Now, yes, you can be. Got the devil on your shoulder. So that was actually, if you're wanting to unite people, you always give them a common enemy, not a common cause.
You give them a boogeyman.
Yep.
That's right.
Absolutely. Well, the fear that Satan could influence and corrupt humans led to increased suspicion and accusations of witchcraft, making witch hunts more acceptable and even necessary in the eyes of many. Well, witch hunts began to spread across Europe in late 16th and early 17th century, driven by this fear of Satan's influence. Women, and sometimes men, were accused of making pacts with the devil and practicing witchcraft. I'd have been arrested. We all three would have been arrested. Okay?
Oh, I'd have been burned at the stake. Every time I looked at them, I'd have been like, they'd been like, oh, she put the evil eye on me. Yes, I did.
She turned me into a newt.
Yeah.
Just scared you, didn't it?
Well, these hunts often resulted in trials and executions as society sought to rid itself of what they believed were agents of Satan. And this fear, as we know, eventually crossed the Atlantic, took root in the American colonies, leading to the infamous Salem witch trials in 1692, with the Puritans believing that Satan was basically running amok in their community. So... But in the end, the development of Satan's character, from Milton's literary masterpiece to the witch hunts, shows how deeply the fear of the devil could and did penetrate society. I like that I used the word penetrate there, but anyways. But it's during the Romantic period with poets like William Blake and Percy Shelley, who embraced Milton's portrayal of Satan as a figure of rebellion. Now, they admired his spirit of defiance and saw him as a symbol of individualism and resistance against oppressive forces. And I love how, like, the picture on the screen, I mean, he just looks so majestic now.
He does.
And chiseled. And, you know, it's the romantic and naked. But this romantic era emphasized emotion and imagination, and Satan actually fit perfectly into this mold. He was seen as a misunderstood hero battling against unjust authority. Works from this time often portrayed him as a complex character, grappling with the tensions between reason and passion. So this new view painted Satan as this tragic figure caught in a struggle for freedom, which very much reflected the romantic fascination with individual struggle and rebellion at the time. So I like that. It's almost like, what's the name of that author? Or no, the guy on the cover of books, Fabio. It's like he becomes It's like the Fabio of the time.
Stupid, sexy Satan.
Shelley's like, what? Listen, I'm trying to make comparisons that work here, okay? I didn't say that they had to. I'm just trying.
Forgive him, Father. He knows not what he does.
No, I don't.
I can't believe it's not Satan.
Oh man, God. Well, anyways, so this literary archetype highlighted Satan's transformation from this horribleness to this, romanticized version of it, I guess you could say. Hello, the romantic period, if you will.
Right.
But it influences, again, countless stories and characters in modern fiction. Now, as we progress into the 19th century, as the 19th century progressed in the 20th century, Satan's image continued to shift. He became a prominent figure in pop culture, showing up in various forms of art and literature. Modern artists explored Satan in diverse ways, using him as a symbol of rebellion, chaos, and existential despair. And some depictions focused on his menacing, almost abstract nature, while others humanized him or presented him in a more sympathetic light.
Mm-hmm.
In modern art and literature, Satan's character is often used to comment on the human condition and the nature of power. And these interpretations challenge traditional religious views, offering a more nuanced or ambiguous take on his role. And in horror genres, Satan remains a central figure, representing the ultimate evil that must be confronted or avoided. And this evolution reflects how society's understanding of Satan has become more complex, moving beyond just simple depictions of evil to explore deeper themes, even into today's time, of rebellion and existential struggle. But as we move into the mid-20th century, Ryan, bringing back what you mentioned earlier, the image of Satan underwent another significant transformation. And in 1966, Anton LaVey founded the Church of Satan, marking a bold reinterpretation of Satan's role in modern society. Now, unlike traditional views that portrayed Satan as a literal being or embodiment of evil, LaVeyan Satanism redefined Satan as a symbol of human nature's darker aspects. It emphasized individualism and self-indulgence, rejecting conventional religious moral codes. And for LaVey and his followers, Satan was not a deity, but a representation of personal empowerment and the pursuit of one's desires. Now, LaVeyan Satanism sparked considerable debate and controversy, as you can imagine. Conservative religious groups were particularly vocal in their criticism.
Right.
Go ahead, Ryan.
I said LaVeyan Satanism is atheism with attitude. It's
Pretty much.
Yeah. And I mean, and like we were talking about earlier, he kind of grasps onto that John Milton version of Satan where, it's like you said, he's exploring the darker natures of human, the darker aspects of human nature and kind of codifying that into a code.
It's about freedom.
Right.
It's about freedom to do as I wish without the fear of judgment.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So
they like, because people, a lot of times, like, you'll in today, because God knows the satanic panic that happened and everything, a lot of people will conflate devil worship with Satanism. They're two totally different things.
Right.
And, I have to remind people, no, Satanism is more like what Anton LaVey was talking about. So.
Yeah, well, we're going to break down here in just a second, kind of a little bit of difference here. But I mean, obviously, the conservative religious groups, they saw this movement as a direct challenge to their values and an affront to traditional religious beliefs. The Church of Satan's focus on personal freedom and self-expression stood in stark contrast to established religious teachings. Now, while LaVeyan Satanism was redefining Satan in a symbolic and secular context, another belief system emerged, theistic Satanism. Now, this less common movement involved the worship or veneration of Satan as a deity or supernatural being. Unlike LaVeyan Satanism, which viewed Satan as a metaphor, theistic Satanists saw him as a real entity with whom one could form a spiritual connection. And for theistic Satanists, Satan is a source of power, knowledge, and liberation. Their beliefs often stand in opposition to mainstream religious teachings, which they view as restrictive or oppressive. And this perspective reflects a continuation of older traditions that recognize Satan as a figure of spiritual significance. So these modern reinterpretations of Satan illustrate a broader shift in how society engages with the concept of evil.
Right.
While LaVeyan Satanism emphasizes personal freedom, that rebellion against traditional morality, theistic Satanism maintains the more traditional view of Satan as a new supernatural force. So, but both movements do contribute to this diverse and evolving understanding of Satan, basically as a whole. But building on that, probably why we have the idea, the whole reason why Satan is the ultimate evil, we're so fucking scared of him. Hollywood has played a significant role in shaping our modern perceptions of this dark figure.
Mhm.
The portrayal of Satan in films has intensified the fear and horror associated with him, embedding him deeply into our cultural consciousness as the ultimate evil. What are you going to say, Ryan?
Have you ever seen Haxon?
I don't think I have.
It's a very, very old movie, and it's a depiction of hell and Satan and stuff, and it's like from the 20s, and it's super, super interesting. You should go check it out. I think it's for free on like HBO or something. Check it out though.
Okay.
It's pretty damn terrifying. I think it might. I could be wrong. I think it might be the first film portrayal of Satan. I could be completely wrong on that, but it's one of the earliest. It's really interesting.
I'll have to go check it out.
Mm-hmm.
Well, films like Rosemary's Baby, The Exorcist, and The Omen have solidified Satan's role as this terrifying antagonist. These movies delve into themes of possession and corruption, presenting Satan as a force that invades and destroys human lives. I mean, probably one of my favorite movies, The Exorcist. We all know how that goes.
Mm-hmm.
You know, young girl gets possessed by the devil. Yeah, it's sinister and one of the scariest fucking movies I've ever seen.
Oh yeah,
came out just before Christmas.
Just before Christmas in 1973. Sure as shit did. What, at Christmas Eve, right?
To the church.
And now
23rd, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
23rd. Yeah, I think it's actually the 23rd that it came
and
out.
now Tubular Bells is no longer a Christmas song. I don't care what anybody says.
Well, Ryan, that's your ringtone on my phone is Tubular Bells.
Is it?
It is.
That's awesome. Because I swear to God, every time around Christmas, Tubular Bells starts playing, I'm looking around, everyone's like, oh, it's so beautiful. And I'm like, nobody else? Really?
I'm going to tell you right now, actually, what freaked me out even more than The Exorcist was The Omen. But
it's all like, for you, Damien.
Yeah. Like the remake later on, whatever. But the original, The Omen, oh, Jesus fucking Christ.
Mm-hmm.
Well, anyways, these films have cemented Satan's place in the horror genre as the ultimate antagonist, just pure evil. They explore our darkest fears, using Satan as a vehicle to embody the darkest aspects of the human psyche. And their influence has made Satan synonymous with terror and malevolence in modern culture. Now, however, not all modern media has followed this path. Some contemporary portrayals of Satan are more satirical or comedic. Shows like South Park and films like Bedazzled present Satan in a lighter, more approachable manner. These depictions often use Satan to critique or parody current societal issues, suggesting a more ambivalent view. But let's face it, The Exorcist, the horror genre, that wins out. But as Ryan so lovingly said at the beginning, Satan's image has also been prominent in popular music, especially in rock and heavy metal. Bands like Black Sabbath, Iron Maiden, and the Hat Ryan's Wearing Slayer have used satanic imagery to evoke themes of rebellion and darkness. These references are often intended for shock value or artistic expression.
Right.
Just basically aligning with Satan in the countercultural movements. So societal norms. So
they're telling stories. It's like a horror movie on record. Like it's a horror movie as a song. It's a lot of fun.
It's a lot of fun.
It is.
Well, continuing from the impact of Hollywood's portrayal of Satan, we find that debates about the nature and role of Satan remain vibrant in today's religious landscape. Even as films and popular culture have shaped our perceptions, the discussion within modern Christianity remains deeply complex. In contemporary Christianity, there's this ongoing debate about whether Satan should be understood as a literal being or as a symbolic representation of evil. Evangelical and fundamentalist groups often hold that Satan is real, personal, this personal entity actively opposing God's will. Now, for these believers, Satan is this concrete presence in the world, working to undermine everything, faith, morality, all that stuff. So this perspective fuels that belief in that spiritual warfare steer that we talked about, towards the middle of this, where he's seen as leading these demonic forces. We've had these discussions on the podcast type thing.
Right.
But then on the other hand, you have more liberal or progressive Christian traditions who often interpret Satan differently. For these groups, Satan is not a literal being, but a metaphor for human capacity for evil and moral failure. This symbolic view shifts the focus from external threats to internal struggles, emphasizing the human responsibility for moral choices. So that's kind of the debate that we're still seeing today. I mean, you see these believers, both traditional and progressive, they engage in those practices, obviously like prayer, deliverance ministries, exorcisms,
Right.
So As we move forward, the image of Satan continues to evolve, reflecting changing attitudes and beliefs about evil and morality. The complex interplay between traditional and modern views highlights a broader cultural dialogue on the nature of evil and the human experience. But as we come to today's times of Satan, the image of Satan looms larger, his shadow stretching across the ages, a figure born not in fire and brimstone, but in the tangled myths and fears of ancient peoples. What began as this chaotic force and nameless adversary in the primeval struggles of gods and men has evolved into the embodiment of all that is malevolent and corrupt in the world. Satan, as we know him today, is not merely this relic of old superstitions. He's a contract, forged and reforged by the human imagination, shaped by the needs, fears, and beliefs of every era he has traversed. From the Near East, the seeds of that dark figure were sown in the stories of divine conflict and cosmic chaos. And basically, we went through the Hebrew Bible there, where he is brought more into light as that collective, which gets even further by the New Testament, leading up into the ultimate, what we just walked down on those paths. So he is a mirror reflecting the anxieties, the moral dilemmas, and the spiritual conflicts of each era he has touched. From the chaotic forces to the terrifying demon, to the tragic anti-hero, to the dark icon of modern culture, Satan's evolution is a testament to the power of myth and the enduring human need to personify the abstract forces of good and evil. That is basically the story of Satan, my friends. Or as Ryan would say, Satan.
Satan.
So hold on, wait.
Yeah.
Back to the question, though. What do we hold true to more, though, now that we're going to go back and answer that? The Old Testament or the New Testament? Do we believe? So are we asking, is it this collective, this adversarial force, or the actual figure? Is that the question that I'm understanding right?
Right.
That is the question is, which do you believe to be more truthful, basically, or more the proper side to follow, I guess. The way so first of all, I've been thinking about this. We all know that the Bible is a collection of stories, a lot like the Aesop's fables. It's more of a guide to live your life. I don't personally take the Bible literally. I think it's a guide, a set of rules, and to be good people. And if you do believe the Bible literally word for word, which is as is your prerogative, everything resets with the New Testament, because once God sent his only begotten son to the earth, everything started over. Everything prior was forgiven and done. So, we bring the people on, and so I guess you kind of have to go with, I think that it's more of a cautionary tale to be a good person, to take care of others, and to follow what would be considered a good and righteous path in kindness and consideration. So I think that if I were going to choose, I think I would choose the path of good and be good and remember to be kind, rather than damnation, death, and destruction, and smiting of everyone and wiping out of destroying the world. I think I would go with New Testament.
Right. I think, I'm with you. Like, you live your life, the life the best you can. The devil's got my tongue too, apparently. You live your life the best you can. The Bible is kind of a guide, for me. Like you said, it's stories to kind of help you, like, maybe you come across a dilemma, like, oh, I don't know how to figure this out. Well, maybe if I look this up here, it'll be here, and I can figure this out this way. But anyway, I tend to believe more on the New Testament side. I do think that over time, as we've seen from the Old Testament, as far as the Old Testament Satan goes, it was more of, like you said, more of the prosecuting angel, and we saw where maybe it's got lost in translation. As far as New Testament goes, I think it has more so congealed into that entity. And even as paranormal investigators, we have come across things in certain places that the evil is palpable. And that whatever it is not necessarily human. And it's very rare you come across that, but we have come across that in certain places before. So I think that there has to be some sort of ultimate evil, because we, in my experience, in our experience, I think we all can say that we felt it. And if you want to put a label on it, you know, like I choose to, I think that would be the devil or Satan or whatever you call it. But I think I'm more in line with the New Testament versus the Old Testament. That made sense. I hope it did.
Very roundabout way, my friend, but yes, it did.
Yeah.
All right. I don't know. God, how transparent do I be?
Right. That's kind of where I'm at.
No, I'm just gonna kind of speak on kind of just, I mean, truly just how I believe. I mean, as I said in the beginning, I'm not here to ridicule anybody's belief system and the way that you think and how you feel within yourself. For me and myself, I'm going to have to go with that. As whether we're talking about the actual embodiment figure, literal entity of Satan versus just this ultimate, or negative forces or whatever. I do not believe in an actual figure of Satan or the devil.
Oh, I'm not telling you said that.
Go for it. I actually don't. I have a hard time believing in the concept that there is a man downstairs sitting high on a throne going, "Oh, you're going to go do this and wreak havoc here and do all that." Now, go ahead, Ryan.
Okay.
I didn't interrupt you. No,
I have to ask you, because out of the three of us on screen, like, you're more interested in the demonic. Like, you're very, so what do you think that is then? Like, if you don't think that there is an ultimate force for evil, that... what do you think the demonic is? Because you yourself have experienced it. I've experienced it somewhere.
No, I know, which is where I was going if you would have let me continue.
Okay, we'll continue then.
Anyways, no, I don't know. I have Satan himself as a figure, as a central figure, sitting underneath the ground or wherever, or down below in the fiery pits of hell, atop a throne or something like that. I have a hard time coming to that conclusion. Now, in that same sense, I am not going to... I'm not sitting here saying that there is not negative forces, evil forces, or anything like that. I do believe in the dualism or duality of the universe. I believe for everything that is good, there is also everything that is bad. So if there are good forces out there, things that I believe in, as in these supernatural beings, you label them as angels. I label as angel just because it's easier and more acceptable.
Right.
There has to be something that is negative that opposes that, in my opinion. Demons, if that's what you want to call them. I have a small belief in a hierarchical system, but it's just super hard for me to believe that this figure of Satan, that, especially after doing this research, I don't know. It's hard for me to believe that there is this central figure that exists. Then it's like I could point at and be like, that's Satan. That's just my belief. I don't know. Even in looking in all the demonology and the demonic and all of that stuff and that I've read up on, I just have a hard time believing it.
So do you not believe that there's like a head demon then? Okay. Not Shelley. I'm saying, but like, if there is a hierarchy.
Shelley's mind just went straight to the fucking gutter. That's what I'm saying.
Right. Nah, shut up.
Yes, Ryan, I totally believe in a head demon. Absolutely, I do. No, but okay, yes, I do believe that there is some type of hierarchical something or another.
Okay.
I just...
So
I don't know what to label them as my thing.
And that's what I'm saying. That's what I was saying is, like, whatever you want to label it, whatever. I mean, I choose to call it Satan or the devil or whatever you want to call it. Do you not think that there is a ultimate force for evil that exists?
A singular entity that is the ruler and leader of it all?
Like, if you believe in a hierarchy, you said you believe in a hierarchy. Do you not believe that there is a one at the top of the food chain that is like the baddest of the bad?
I mean, I guess at some point there would have to be, yeah. But,
right.
I mean,
and like I said, whatever you want to label it, because Satan is just
he's the head demon. I'm labeling him the head demon from now on. No, he's the head demon. That's all I'm labeling him as from now on.
I'm reading the comments, y'all.
The dome.
As it says, not the head demon. We just call him Dick. So yes, I believe in Dick, very much so.
Well, we all knew that.
No, I mean, in all seriousness, yes, there. I do believe in some type of hierarchical structure, but I don't know what to label and or call it. I don't know if there is a head demon or a head council or a head demon council. I don't know. I mean, I don't know and I don't think any of us know. I mean, like 100%, people have faith in it. Yes, I understand that, and I admire people for their faith and the side that we don't know about. But for me personally, this is just me being fully transparent and as open as I can. I don't know what to label it.
I'm saying, well, yeah, like we don't know what, like, that's what I'm saying is like, with the whole, like I said, the Satan or the devil thing, that's how I choose to label it. But you were talking about how you believe in the duality of the universe. And like, if you believe in the laws of science, like what Newton said, for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. There has to be an antithesis of something that you do or something that exists. So do you not believe it then that there is an ultimate force for good?
I don't remember either of y'all being interrogated this hardcore when y'all answered.
I'm just curious because I know this is like your wheelhouse, so I'm saying, like, do you not believe that there is a ultimate force for good and there has to be an ultimate force for evil at the same time?
He's asking if you believe in the duality.
I mean, no, he does believe in the duality. I'm asking if he believes in, like, whatever the ultimate force is, if there's an entity like on either side of the spectrum.
Let me simplify this for you and for the viewers and listeners. Basically, you're asking me, do I have a belief in the equivalent of God and Satan?
Right. Essentially. Whatever, I mean, you don't have to call it that, whatever you want to call it, but essentially kind of the same concept.
I have a belief in a higher power.
Okay, so then you would, if you have a belief in a higher power, would you not also have to have a belief, according to your belief system, would you not have to have a belief in a power that opposes that higher power?
Which is the negative forces that we have come in contact with. There may not be.
But what I'm saying though is, you say you believe in a hierarchy. So if you believe in a hierarchy, you believe there is like something at the top on both ends, right?
Not necessarily.
Okay, I'm just curious. That's all I'm asking.
I mean, not necessarily. I mean, I believe that there is a higher power. Yes, I believe.
But if there's a hierarchy, there has to be like a pecking order. There has to be a food chain. Right?
I get what you're saying, but you're not understanding what I'm saying. I believe that there are forces out there that oppose the good.
Okay.
Now, does that side itself have a hierarchy leading to a top macho man? I have no idea. I don't. I have a hard time believing that when it comes to hell. I believe in a higher power. Yes. I believe in something other than this life, past this.
So for every macho man, there's a Jake the Snake.
Sure. Right. We can go with that. I mean, I don't know. I have a different interpretation of what heaven and hell is. And what the higher power is, what the ultimate evil is.
Yeah.
I just have a hard time believing that there is a central figure in hell that is basically like, I'm Satan and I own this place. This is my condo.
Well, like I said, the only thing that is confusing me about that though is because you said you believe in a hierarchy, so there has to be a pecking. In my mind, there has to be a pecking order,
and I think that's what you're getting hung up on here.
Right.
Is don't get too much hung up on that. Okay. Do I believe that there is a hierarchy of some sorts? Yes. Is it like, you go into like it is in the military, where they admiral and a colonel. No, I don't believe in that hardcore of a hierarchy. Okay. Do I believe in different figures on the other side of whether that is thought form entities versus demonic versus angels versus spirits? Yes, I do believe in those different things. What that hierarchy is, I ain't got a fucking clue.
Okay.
I mean, it could be spirits on one level and then angels and everything else. And when it's people call God and everything all on the same level, I don't know. But I do believe that there is some type of structure to the other side.
Okay.
I just don't know what it is.
Okay.
I love the fact that I got to eat popcorn tonight and let you two dudes go out.
About damn time. Me and Ryan never get to go at it.
You and Ryan never go at it. That's why I'm just
I felt like I was being fucking interrogated here. Like, this is a goddamn FBI session, dude.
Well, the thing is like I said, I know this is your wheelhouse. You're like very into all of that. So
I do like the dark. I do
curious.
like the demonic. I do like all this stuff. I read into it and everything like that. I study it. I mean, I'm not going to call myself a demonologist or anything like that. I don't know it that well, but I do look into it. I've read stories and everything like that. But yeah, I've had a very fun time in the paranormal because my entire belief system has collapsed in on itself, and I'm having to rebuild it. That's the thing.
All right.
And so what that structure looks like on both sides, good or evil, I still don't know. I still don't have a clue.
Okay.
I know some of the figures and things that I believe in, but putting it in order and putting it and labeling it the way that most individuals do,
right?
Mine's not the same. I just know there's good out there. I know there's bad out there. And that's basically about as far as I can get. I do believe that there has to be some type of structure to it. I don't know what it looks like though. So it's kind of my overall, kind of my generic thought process. God damn, I'm fucking tired now.
Inquiring minds want to know, Blake.
Oh, your inquiring mind can fuck off.
It's hard to argue with him, isn't it, Blake? Because he won't let you answer.
He's fucking column A, column B. God damn.
Pick a side.
Oh my gosh. So, final thoughts, you two, because my brain's now mush. Thanks, Ryan.
You're welcome. I can keep going.
Oh no, I'm quite.
Give your
good.
final thought, Ryan.
Final thought. I mean, I think that. So it's hard to it's kind of hard to put into words. Shelley, you go first, and then let me think about this because I'm trying to put it into words what I want to say.
You got to wrap it up concisely if I go first.
Go ahead.
I think that the as we've been talking about, the rise of Satan is actually it's a coming together of, again, to create a common enemy. It's a way to unite people under the idea of Christianity, which is mainly how a lot of religions converted. They would go and preach Christianity to save these poor unwashed souls from the evil that was known as the devil.
Right.
I think the devil is not necessarily a being per se. It's an idea. It's a general human emotion, and it's a way to rein in and identify those ideas that aren't good. And so you have to, without the dark, you can't have the light. You have to know where the light is. And the only way to do that is to know where your own darkness lies. And I think Satan is the embodiment of your own darkness. So don't do that.
So I think that there is a, whatever you want to call it, whatever you want to label it, I think that there is a singular entity out there that is the ultimate manifestation of evil. I think that does exist. However, talking about Satan in the respect that we talked about it this evening, I think that it is whatever society and whatever religion needs it to be at the moment.
Absolutely.
I think it is, for whatever like plot or literary device it needs to serve in any story, in any conflict. So I think that is generally what it is, but I think that there still is something out there that is the ultimate form of evil. If that makes sense.
Well, I'll say this to wrap it up, because this research was fascinating to me. It was actually kind of fun to walk down this like dark path to figure out the beginning origins of the devil, of Satan. I found it fascinating when I was able to link certain those little things up, like the name of Beelzebub, and this full circle moment of the us versus them, or the we versus they. It was very fascinating to watch him transform throughout time, as Ryan said, as the centuries needed him to be. He reflected exactly what the thoughts of the people were at the time. So I found that absolutely fun to do, fascinating to talk about. I hope a little bit tonight that I helped kind of unmask him a little bit, maybe to take the anxiousness behind him away for some, or the fear for him Because the fear, I'm going to be honest, in all this research, I think the fear of him comes more from the Hollywood aspect of everything, of what we're shown on the daily about him. So, what, Ryan?
Can I ask you? I do have one more question.
Oh God,
it's his final thought.
I know, but I do have one more question for you. It's something that's completely thought of. So, as you were doing your research, I know a lot of people make the distinction between like Satan and Lucifer. Did the research and anything that you found, was there a distinction that you saw?
The only distinction really is kind of where it was talking about like the Satan turning into, Satan himself versus just the independent character of Lucifer being the fallen angel.
Okay.
I do know that there are that a lot of people believe that devil, Lucifer, Satan, Beelzebub, those are all separate. But a lot of people believe that they're all one entity. So that was really in the research. I didn't really go down that path though. What's the difference between Satan, Lucifer, Beelzebub, the devil? I just more or less kind of tried to follow and trace the story of how we get to where we are today from basically beginning civilization.
Okay.
So
I was just curious if it came up at all.
And with that, Blake, do you want to tell them everything they need to know?
Absolutely, I sure will. Well, we have After Dark with EVP 2 seasons out. That is 16 episodes on Paraflix Paranormal Plus. So go check out those episodes with some of our special guests and most haunted locations, featuring some of our best caught evidence from each location you will not see here on the podcast. We have also special guests like our wonderful friend Chad Wandell, Katie Stafford. We've had several that are just a hoot to have on, and we thank them again for coming on with us. Paraflix Paranormal Plus is available on Amazon Fire, Roku TV, Apple TV, iOS, and Google Play. Make sure to use our link to sign up, which will be posted to our Facebook page tomorrow via our link tree, and is also in the show notes for you audio listeners. That code is AfterDark25 for 25% off your annual subscription, which makes it like $37 for the whole year. A lot of really cool content on that. Again, that's going to be posted to our Facebook tomorrow morning. And within that link tree link, you can also find every social media channel we are on, our online merchandise store, our public investigations, and our Patreon page. Our Patreon page is the fastest and easiest way you can directly help support the show. For just $5 a month, you will gain access to well over 400 additional Patreon exclusive videos. Your support from this goes directly to the show and all the ghostly adventures we get to bring you week after week. This price will never change. And with that, you currently get our pre and post broadcasts, which are the 30 minutes before and the 30 minutes after this live broadcast. Yes, an entire extra hour with us each and every week, where we discuss things even further, fight, argue, debate, whatever you want to call it, act goofy. Tonight one was a fun one. If you want to hear how Pluto wound up in my anus, you can allegedly. But anyways, tell way too a personal side of things, and all of that. All of that.
Pluto's his name.
Shut up, Ryan. It also includes our Patreon exclusive unedited investigation footage from places such as Squirrel Cage Jail, Hill House Manor, and many others. So if you ever wanted to watch that, that is only on Patreon. And don't forget, we do offer a 7-day free trial for our Patreon page, so you can check it out prior to purchasing. If you want to see us in person, we are actually going to be at the Rock Island Paracon up in Illinois. Where's that one at? Illinois. God damn. I just led an entire hour and a half episode. Okay, bear with me. That is going to be October the 5th up in Rock Island. We will make sure that we are going to start posting stuff on that for tickets and how you get to come and see us there. So be on the lookout for that. Make sure you head over and follow us on all of our social media channels. Search Everything Vaguely Paranormal. Look for that green sound wave. And remember, to you audio listeners, you can also tune into us live on Facebook and YouTube each and every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. These are all the ways you can directly support Everything Vaguely Paranormal, but we also appreciate your love and support for us through those likes, comments, shares, views, and downloads. And remember, as always, any questions, comments, or stories you'd like to share with us, those can be submitted to us at theevppod@gmail.com. That is THEEVPPOD@gmail.com.
Like, share, and subscribe to that YouTube channel.
Absolutely. Well, y'all, thank y'all so much for joining us for another weekly episode of Everything Vaguely Paranormal. As always, I am Blake Smith, and my partners in the paranormal, Miss Shelley Pruitt, Mr. Ryan Roberts, and we will see you next Tuesday. Bye, y'all.
Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.